Let's kick things off with a question that's been bugging philosophers, well, forever. This quote, it sets the stage perfectly for what we're about to get into, because a new physics paper is suggesting this isn't just some deep thought, it might actually be how the universe works.
So today, we're diving into this pretty wild paper that proposes a completely new way of looking at, well, everything, from a single electron all the way up to the entire universe. And it all starts by finding this tiny little crack in one of the most famous experiments in all of science.
All right, so our story begins with a classic physics mystery, the double-slit experiment. Now, you've probably heard of it, but the author of this paper points out a huge contradiction that, honestly, most textbooks just kind of sweep under the rug. You know the drill. If you fire bullets through two slits, they act just like you'd expect. You get two nice, neat piles behind each slit. Simple. But when you do the same thing with electrons, something really strange happens. Instead of two piles, you get this bizarre wave-like interference pattern. It's almost as if each electron went through both slits at the very same time. How is that even possible?
Well, the standard answer you'll find in any physics book is that all the electrons are perfectly identical, what they call coherent, so their probability waves can all interfere with each other. It's a nice, tidy explanation that hangs on one massive assumption.
And here's the crack in the whole thing. The author argues that in the real world, electrons fired from an electron gun are not perfectly identical, not even close. They have slightly different energies, different spin directions, so they shouldn't be able to interfere. They should act more like those bullets, but they don't. So, what's going on?
To solve this paradox, the paper throws a real curveball at us. It completely redefines what an electron even is. Turns out it's not what we've been taught at all.
So get this. According to this new model, an electron isn't some tiny little dot. Nope. It's actually a dynamic internal system, a combination of two quantum states, spin up and spin down, that exist at the exact same time. It's like a coin that is constantly and forever both heads and tails at once.
So this internal system has two possible setups. In the first one, let's just call it C1, you've got one internal spin pointing up and the other one pointing down.
And in the second one, C2, they're just flipped. But here's the key. A single electron isn't in one state or the other. It's a mix, a superposition of both of these states at all times.
Okay, so how does this solve the experiment? Well, this is the really clever part. When this two-state electron gets to the double slits, it doesn't have to pick a side. It just splits its own internal states. One state goes through the left slit, the other goes through the right, and then they interfere with each other. A single electron creates its own interference pattern. Boom, mystery solved.
All right, that's a really neat solution for one experiment, right? But believe me, this idea gets way bigger. Let's zoom out and see how this might just explain the fundamental puzzle of how anything in the universe interacts with anything else.
See, here's an even bigger problem. The rules of quantum mechanics are pretty clear. For particles to interact, they have to be identical or coherent. But we just established that in the real world, no two electrons are perfectly identical. So how in the world can they push each other apart? How can anything interact at all? The paper's answer is something called indirect interaction. So the two different electrons, they don't actually touch each other directly. Instead, their internal states create these new perfectly identical or coherent points in the space between them. The real interaction, the real push, happens between these new points, which then creates an indirect force on the original electrons. It's like they're talking to each other through a middleman.
And this is where things go from weird to, well, completely reality-bending. Through a process the author calls amplitude resonance, the distance between these new points effectively collapses to zero. This means the interaction isn't just super fast, it's instantaneous. It happens without any regard for the speed of light.
Instantaneous, indirect interaction. Okay, let that sink in for a second. If that's really how things work, what does it mean for the rest of physics? Well, the author suggests this single mechanism could be the key to the holy grail of physics, a unified theory of everything.
You know, right now, physics has totally different models for all the fundamental forces. Electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, even gravity. But this new model proposes a radical simplification. What if every single one of these forces is just the exact same mechanism? Just that indirect exchange happening between those coherent points.
And that leads to this incredibly powerful idea. Maybe the fundamental forces of nature aren't really different at all. They could just be different flavors of the exact same underlying process, and the only thing that changes is the mass and number of particles doing the interacting.
It's an unbelievably elegant idea.
And this all brings us to the final and probably most mind-bending conclusion of the whole paper. This isn't just about forces anymore. This is about the fabric of reality itself.
The author is basically proposing that nature is made of two objective realities, both happening at the same time. The first one is our world, the classical physical world where things are stuck obeying the speed of light. But underneath all of that is a second, coherent reality, where all interaction is instantaneous. And these coherent points, they're the bridge that connects our world to that deeper one.
So let's just put it all together. A particle isn't a tiny dot, it's a dynamic internal system. These systems create meeting points in space that allow any two particles to interact, indirectly and instantly. These points are a link between our everyday reality and a deeper quantum reality, which means that on some fundamental level, the entire universe is constantly and instantly interconnected.
Which leaves us with one last kind of spooky thought. If any change anywhere in the cosmos is felt instantly through this hidden network, what does that mean for us? It suggests a connection far, far deeper than we ever imagined, and it brings us right back to where we started. What is the difference between illusion and reality? If this model is even close to right, maybe there really is no difference at all.